It's nice to see everybody here tonight. Thank you for coming. The first item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes from October 29th.
So moved.
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The chair votes aye. Thank you. Next, we have the approval of the warrant.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? No? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Abstain.
Abstain? Okay. So that's 3-0-2. Thank you. The next item is public participation for issues that are not on the agenda. I know a number of people are here because of an item later, hopefully not too much later. And I wanted to see if Mr. Pearson, if you'd want to come up and speak. I also want to remind people during public participation that it is a business meeting of the school committee, and we welcome the input and comments, but our public participation policy suggests, allows for 3 minutes speaking time so that we can continue with our meeting. And public comments should be addressed to and through the chair. Thank you. Please state your name and such.
Hello, Madam Chairperson. Madam Chairperson.
You just turned it off.
Now it's working? Okay. My name is Monty Pearson, and I come before you as a white male, a Protestant, and the father of 2 children who participated in school musicals when they were in high school. And I want to express my strong objections to the school district sponsoring a Christmas musical called Elf. I'm aware that some people may discount my opinion because my wife serves on school committee, but I assure you that I can and do think and speak for myself. I object to the school district sponsoring a religious musical that celebrates the Christian holiday known as Christmas. Some people may say that it is a secular musical about Santa and his elves and has no religious content. I think this is incorrect. Santa and presents and jingle bells are a secular marketing consumerist dimension that's been attached to a Christian holiday. In fact, many Christians are offended by the way in which the Santa cult takes attention away from the religious aspects of the holiday. In the 21st century, this is an inappropriate statement by the school district. What are you saying to the Muslim, Hindu, atheists, and Jewish children who, if they want to be in the school musical, have to perform in a Christian cultural celebration? What are you saying to their parents? Are they being told their culture is a second-class resident of our town? Let me put it another way. Will there be a musical next December celebrating Muslim or Jewish traditions? Will there be a musical next December about how President Thomas Jefferson was a deist and did not believe in God? I would guess not. Freedom of religion is a cherished right in the United States. Religious beliefs and cultural traditions are rightly taught freely and without fear in homes all over town. They are practiced and taught in religious institutions around town. Weekend days are set aside for these holy practices. There's no need for our public schools to intervene in the religious life of the town by celebrating a specific religious tradition. I urge the school committee to act tonight to cancel the musical Elf. There is still time. There's still more than a month before all of the practices and things have happened. And I suggest you instruct the music department to put on a non-religious musical in the spring, as is the long tradition here in Burlington. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone have any response or comment? No comment. Okay, thank you for your participation. All right, so is there anyone else here for public participation regarding an issue that is not on the agenda? Okay. The next item on our agenda is our student representative, Bridget Conceição. Thank you.
Hi. Student Council is currently at our Thanksgiving dinner meeting, which started at 6, and Spirit Week starts tomorrow, and Pep Rally is next week, which everyone's getting excited for. I also brought a representative from each class this week to check in with you guys and to share what they've been working on, and the only one that couldn't make it was from the freshman class because they don't have a student representative yet because they're still working out our new plan thing, and they're working on fundraising and community building for the holidays before we go on break.
So,
Can they introduce
Yes.
yes, please come up to the microphone and introduce yourselves. Okay,
You can come. Yeah.
you can all come at the same time if you'd like. Welcome.
Thank you. I'm Nick Latsis. I represent the senior class. We're currently working on selling school spirit T-shirts, and we're also organizing a dodgeball event before the pep rally.
My name's Ali Sharada. I represent the junior class. Last spring, we secured a location for our senior prom. It's going to be at the Long Wharf Marriott in Boston. Right now, we're currently fundraising to lower the cost of like the tickets because they might be a little expensive since it's at like a better location. And we're also looking into locations for the senior banquet.
Great, okay.
Hi, I'm Jessica Joseph. I'm the representative for the sophomore class. As of now, we don't have much going on in our class except for the fact that we're trying to secure a date for a winter dance on January 3rd. But we have a meeting on Friday in which we'll talk about it in more detail and make some more decisions on it.
That's great. Thank you for those updates. Dr. Conti?
Doesn't the pep rally involve Bridget, some competition between the classes? Isn't that correct?
Yeah, I think the senior student council plans that. I'm almost positive. I think we have like 2 MC people, and then I think it's like we did like hula hooping one year, handstand contests, but I know it's between each class.
No, I just wanted to give the student representatives an opportunity to taunt one another in preparation.
Yeah, we used to have like competitions where we like wear different colors.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
We stopped doing that, but there's still just going to be class competitions.
Okay. So, well, thank you all very much for the report.
Yeah.
Have a great Spirit Week.
Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Have fun. That's it? So is that all your reports that you have tonight? Okay. I also want to ask, I know you're a representative on the Equity Committee, the district-wide Equity Committee, and they met on October 29th, and so if you don't have any particular update, were you in attendance, Mr. Larkin? Could you just give us a brief update? Thank you.
Yeah, we have another meeting scheduled next Tuesday, and I think we'll have some concrete action items to share. Like a couple of the things we're working on right now are there's a survey that we were going to do for middle and high school students that will have, again, more details about the when we're going to do that. And also there was a recommendation from one of the equity team members to reach out to a gentleman that has some experience supporting districts in this work and possibly come out and do some small group interviews. So I've spoken to him, so I was going to follow up with the Equity Committee next week, and so we may have some concrete results from my conversation. I just want to run it by the committee. And then we have a commitment from the Burlington administrative team to all take part in an ideas training this year as the first step in moving towards a plan where all staff will be regularly go through a training that's similar to that. So I think we'll have more action items. We've had 2 meetings so far. The first one was kind of getting to know everybody on the committee. Last meeting, we get down to kind of setting some goals for this year, and I think we'll have some concrete action items and a timeline after the next meeting.
Great. Did you want to add anything to that? No.
And I just want to say, honestly, Bridget and the high school students, their involvement has really been tremendous in helping us move forward, so thank you.
Great, thank you. Anyone else? All right, thanks a lot. Okay, have fun at Spirit Week. All right, are there any subcommittee reports? Okay. Ways and Means, good to see you. Do you have any reports at this time? Okay, thank you. And are there other announcements that people wanted to make tonight? Dr. Conti?
Just have actually a welcome announcement. We found out every year the Simon Youth Foundation, who is our partner for the Evening Academy, recognizes an Administrator of the Year and a Teacher of the Year, and 2 Burlington educators were recognized for their work in the alternative education space. And I think so Jill Graham was recognized as the Simon Youth Academy Administrator of the Year, and Gerard Coughlin was recognized as the Teacher of the Year. And unlike many other of the programs, as you all know, the folks who are working at our Evening Academy work full-time during the day as well. So I think that they're just remarkable educators, and I think the recognition just speaks so highly of their efforts. And the whole purpose of the Simon Youth Foundation, their motto is to turn more tassels, is to get students high school diplomas who may not necessarily otherwise achieve that. And I think our Evening Academy program, which has been around for a long time, decades, has been doing that even before the partnership with the Simon Youth Foundation. But this is again, it's a national foundation, so this is really a national recognition for 2 Burlington, again, educators. So I want to thank them for their efforts.
Yes, congratulations to Jill and Gerard, and thank all the staff at the Evening Academy for all the work they do. Any other comments or announcements?
Always nice to hear good news.
Yes, good. All right, the next agenda item is to discuss the elementary space needs and potential configuration. I'm delighted, I think probably a number of you are here for that purpose, and I want to start by saying this is the very beginning of this conversation. We wanted to be sure that there was opportunity for public input, and so we set aside about a half an hour, hopefully tonight, for people to give input. We've been discussing it sort of on the surface a little bit over the last several months, but we do want to make sure that as we make this decision that we hear from all the stakeholders in town, whether it's parents or anyone who lives in town. We are starting to have enrollment pressures on the elementary classroom space, and we wanted, let's see, I already said that part, okay. Additionally, for people who are here tonight, you probably know there is a survey online on our public school website. So for people who haven't seen it yet, it's on the Burlington Public Schools website under the district tab. When you go to the district tab, it says elementary building planning, and you can put in your opinion on that as well. I hear that we've had about 500 comments already, so I'm really pleased that our outreach here has reached people so that we can include all of those ideas and comments as we move forward. We are looking for ideas for conversation, for the planning, and as a school committee, we have made a commitment to be good stewards of this process. We can't and we shouldn't wait until the last minute to consider what our vision and plan should be for the future of these older elementary school buildings. We know that there are the growing enrollment pressures, and our recent master plan, which was in 2016, indicated that both the Fox Hill and the Pine Glen schools currently could use up to $8.5 and $7.5 million respectively for repairs and upgrades. Some of you know we applied this year for the 8th time for state support for the renovations that we need at the high school. And regardless of whether or not this renovation is approved by the state authority, which is called the MSBA, if you hear us use the term MSBA, that's the state authority that helps school systems financially and otherwise with school building projects. So this year, we will be submitting an application for an elementary school project. And that's what this conversation is that we're having tonight and have been having for a while. We We do know that even if whatever we submit in April for an elementary project, it would take at least 6 or 7 or 8 years, even if we were approved in the first year. So this is just the very beginning of this conversation. It is a long process, but we wanted to be sure that there was public input at this early stage. So I'm going to ask the school committee if they have any comments they want to make now. Dr. Conti, would you like to say anything at this point?
Yeah, because a lot of the emails I've received or the phone calls I received were sort of panicked that we're breaking ground next week. And so I just, again, want to reassure people that's not the case. There's sort of 2 ways to go about building a school. If you want it completely locally funded, then it's your money. You have a lot of latitude to sort of design what you want and build what you want. That's probably still a 3-year process when it comes to a year to design and 2 years to construct. The state process is a scripted process, and it's a scripted process by design that takes about 6 or 7 years. So even if we were approved, and we have approval occurs in December, even if our project were approved, we're still talking 6 to 7 years before that project is completed. You don't need to have everything designed. There's a design phase that's part of that. There's a feasibility phase that's part of it. So there's still a tremendous amount of time. So no decisions have been made. I'll say that again. No decisions have been made. But we basically have 3 buildings that are relatively new or been renovated. Francis Wyman, the middle school, and Memorial. We have 3 buildings that need work. And so what we're trying to do is think about the best way to do that. You can only submit 1 priority to the state at a time. So even though we have 3 buildings that need work, we can't say we have 3 buildings, help us with 3 buildings. We have to pick 1. So in 2016, we had a architectural firm look at all of our buildings. They went through. That's where Ms. Simon got the numbers that she got. They looked at all the systems. And what they said our priority should be Burlington High School. So essentially for the last 7 years, we've applied to the state for state funding to renovate Burlington High School. We've been turned down 7 years because the state has priorities. They only have a limited amount of funds. They've been out to visit us twice. They feel our application is well done. They see the need. And our need is not only for systems like the heating and cooling, which are now 40-plus years old. We also have need to renovate our science classrooms and do some other renovations in our classrooms. So, but what we are maybe getting is because this high school was designed, I think it opened, and I think, Mr. Nelson, you might have been 73, but I think it had 2,000 students in it when it opened. So we have about 1,000 students now. We filled up that other space with BCAT, with the lab collaborative. The central office wasn't here, so we're using all the space. But I think from the state's perspective, we're not going to have enrollment pressure in this building. Obviously, we're not going to double the size of our high school. Or maybe what the state would say, if you were to double the size of the high school, move the central office somewhere else, right? That's what they might say. We are seeing some enrollment pressure at the elementary schools because we only have so many elementary school classrooms. Low class size is something the school committee prioritizes. I think it's really important. And at some point, we're just running out of classroom spaces to continue to do that. So we are thinking of switching our priority from our high school application, which is currently in, which we will find out next month whether we are supported or not. So in December, let's say they turn us down again for the 8th time, okay? Then we'll have to resubmit in April a statement of interest. So what the school committee is saying, do we want to go submit a high school a 9th time, or do we want to switch and submit an elementary proposal in April? If we submit an elementary proposal in April, again, it would be for a new elementary school or a new elementary sort of building. We wouldn't hear again until a year from this December whether the state would even consider the project to enter into their 6-year process. So all the configurations that you have would be determined. Once we were picked up into the state process, they would do a feasibility study. They would say whether they agree or disagree with our sort of evaluation of our context. And then there would be a design process, and that's when we would consider some of the options that you have here. So again, we're still 2 years away at best before we're even going to start that conversation. Moving forward, then again, design happens, and then you sort of move forward from there. Essentially, the committee, Ms. Simon, wanted just to inform people that we may be shifting our priority from the high school, because we've been doing that the last 7 years, to an elementary school. But again, no decisions have been made. I just want to stress that again. And I just wanted to make one last point is, even if we were to get an elementary school supported by the state, that doesn't mean our high school needs are going away either. So we really need to continue to have good conversations with the selectmen, with the town's financial team, to talk about spending money. High schools and schools in general are very expensive. So, I'll sort of a frame of reference. Arlington High School is a little bit bigger than us. They're in the process now. I think their early designs are coming in around $300 million. So you get to big numbers very, very quickly. Billerica High School just opened, which is an 8 through 12 building, and I think it was around $187 million, $190 million. So, so I just want to give that perspective. So I'd love to hear all the input, but again, we're a long way away. We may get turned down on our elementary school 2 or 3 times. Mr. Murphy, when I first came here, Memorial School had been proposed for, you said it took 8 years to get Memorial School approved? Is that right?
Yeah.
So we're trying. Why work with the state? Honestly, if they can pick up 50% of the cost, it makes a lot of sense to do. The most important part of a school building, I have to tell you, is we have to make sure they're sort of safe and heated and all that other stuff. The most important asset we have in that are the people educating the kids inside of the building. So we will continue to try to do that. We have, we may have older buildings, but we have incredibly up-to-date modern teachers and principals and staff in our buildings and support people in our buildings. That's our most important focus. But again, the conversation tonight with the committee is going to be about some options that we have and whether we're should strongly consider shifting our focus from the high school, where we're not going to have enrollment pressure from the state's perspective, to that. If you partner with the state, and again, Mr. Murphy can attest to this, you have to use the state calculators. What I mean by that is when we first were designing the new Memorial School, we wanted to build was supposed to be sized for about 600 students, given the future enrollment projection work that we had done. But the state, you have to use their enrollment projections. And they said we didn't need a 600 student school, they would only support a 500 student school. So if you're using their money, they get to can make that decision. So that's part of their feasibility and design process, is they really step in and you have to use their tools. Part of the handout, we did a 10-year enrollment projection, and the enrollment projection over the next 10 years, the projections that we got is they're looking at housing and building and all the other stuff. They were looking at about a 10% increase in students over the next 10 years. So if we're roughly around, 3,500, 3,600 students, you can do the math. We're probably talking about an additional 350. You all never have kids in sort of organized, easy ways, so I can't say they're going to be distributed across all grades. So you never know how that's going to impact things. But a 10% increase in the student body would create pressure, especially at the elementary level, on class sizes. Not because we're unwilling to add teachers, but we have no space to add, no classrooms to add the teachers to. So that's the background. And again, if we caused any sort of anxiety from this, I apologize. Sometimes you get so immersed in it, you forget that other people aren't aware that it's a 6 or 7 year process, and that we're still in that. So I apologize for that. So with that, I will let the school committee talk about options and listen to what people are feeling.
So is there someone on the committee who would like to make a comment at this point? No? Yes? No, we're ready to hear. So, again, I want to remind people, there's a lot of people who may want to speak. If you could try to keep your comments to 3 minutes, we'd really appreciate that, and address your comments to me as the chair. So is there someone who would like to speak? Please come up, and please state your name, so we can, know who you are. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Jamie Greitzer. I have 3 little girls, and my oldest is in 1st grade at Pine Glen. Personally, this will impact probably my 3rd child. Professionally, I have a master's in educational psychology, and I work in a local district where 2 small schools that I worked at merged to one. And a lot of problems arose from that. So I have some personal ties to this, but also some professional experience. And I don't pretend to speak for anybody, any of my neighbors, but I know for us, I have a lot of concerns about a couple of the options. We really appreciate the small nature of our school. We love our school.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm concerned that when you merge schools, you lose resources. So professionally, I've seen, having 2 special ed teachers in 2 different buildings merge into 1 building, 1 special ed teacher. Reading specialists, 2 reading specialists, 1 reading specialist. 2 psychologists, now 1 psychologist, things of that nature. And I would hate to see that our children would lose out on resources if things were merged. Also, professionally, knowing that the research has shown that the longer children are in a school, the safer they feel, the more they're invested, the stronger the community bond for them. Having that small school for like pre-K to K, that one option, concerns me because it's less time in schools for the kids. It's 1 less year. As I'm sure you're aware, the research out there shows pre-K through 8th is the model that the kids do the best, so I'd hate to see an even smaller breakout in that option. And I appreciate you would be surprised when I started in my school district, we were in the talking phase, and now I'm working in that big school. So
Okay.
the 6 years goes very quickly, and thank you for hearing me.
Great, thank you. Yes, Mr. Murphy, why don't you
Just
wait
a
a second?
follow-up, if I could. I'm
Please.
curious, one of the, and I understand what you're saying about combining 2 into 1. I think we all share that concern. But one of the options is to put 2 new buildings on the Fox Hill site with some shared common areas. Kind of a hybrid, not combining them academically so
Right.
much, but some of the gyms, the cafeterias, things like that might be a
Right.
shared common area. Any experience with that type of a setup, or what would your thoughts be on that?
I don't, but it's similar to the trailers, and my concern with that is the kids feel isolated when they're not really part of the building. And if they had shared common space, would that be attached, or would they have to leave and go outside to go there? I worry about the winter months, things
Yeah,
of that nature.
I think some of those details yet to be hashed out, but the thought, I think, process behind it was they'd have 2 separate buildings, the Fox Hill and the Pine Glen,
One campus.
but all on the Fox Hill site, because there's a
Right.
lot of land up there. The beauty of that is we could be building those and still using the existing buildings. We wouldn't need a swing space building someplace, so that's why we're focusing on the Fox Hill site. But I was just kind of curious whether you had any experience of that type of a thing with essentially two buildings on the same site.
The only experience I have with that is I know Tewksbury has that. And I couldn't tell you anything about it because I don't work for
Okay. Well,
Tewksbury,
that's-
but I know that that would be a good place to
Thank
look
you.
to see how that works.
Somebody we can talk to.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely.
Good, thank you. Mrs. Russo?
I'm just curious, what were
Sure.
the sizes of the 2 schools prior, and what is it now for students?
I believe it was low 200s, and now it's
Okay.
over 400,
Okay.
475, close to that, I think.
Okay, thank you. Thank
You're
you.
welcome. It's a big school.
Anyone else have any questions? Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you
All
for
right.
hearing me.
Yes, please, if you could come up and, yes? Can you come sit here, because then other people will be able to hear if you speak into the microphone, okay? Thank you so much, and I know you said your name, but if you could say it again.
My name is Ronald Lamb.
Okay,
I've been
thank
a
you.
resident of Burlington for 58 years. All my children went through the school system. Two things. One is, I filled out the questionnaire, and my answers got truncated. So when you fill out the questionnaire, I went on a little bit. Only one line shows up.
Okay.
So somebody from a computer perspective should check it out. Maybe it was my computer, but I'm not sure. And secondly, my wife and I were, she was chairman of the ad hoc school committee to build this building. We went through the school committee process for 2.5 years, and the school committee threw their hands up and said, we cannot get it through. At that time, we had an open town meeting. Over 2,000 people showed up in the old high school now on Center Street, which is called, not Marshall Simons, but yeah, Marshall Simons, yes. We gave options we decided we were gonna go ahead. We gave hot options for 3, and we had the grand design, the middle design, and the cheap design. And it was an open town meeting, went on for many hours, and we ended up, we proposed the expensive one first, the cheapest one first, and we ended up with the middle one. It was an ad hoc group. School committee was not part of it. It was driven by the individual parents. At the time, we had children were everywhere. We're in double sessions. We listened to the parents. The parents came up to the solution. My recommendation is get the parents involved in the study committees. They know what's going on. They know what they want. And my experience is certainly going to be totally different from your experience with the new school. And I think parent participation is key. And I presume you'll have a study committee, which we had, and get those wonderful young mothers and fathers involved. That's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any comments? No. I also want to just point out that if someone does have trouble with the survey online, they could send an email if there's a need to say more than what there's room for, okay? Is there someone else? Yes, please, if you could come and state your name. Thank you.
Hi, Christopher Campbell. I'm here on behalf of my 10-month-old daughter, who will be directly impacted by the decisions that you guys will be making. My wife and I moved to town a couple of years ago, and really the reason we moved here was the Burlington Public Schools. I'm a public school administrator myself, was a public school teacher at the time, and public schools is what Burlington can always stand on. More importantly, school size and class size really do matter. And when we look at our elementary schools, be able to preserve as best as possible an equity across the school district should be our priority for our students. Understanding the needs of 2 of our schools that do have some significant improvements in place, I would have concerns going outside of the 4-school or 3-school model where we're not talking about equity across the district. When we're looking from an administrative point of view on shared spaces, I would be concerned about the administration and how they are going to work together on field days and, you know, recess and all of those things. And while I think the Fox Hill site is a good site to be able to propose for this, I'm also concerned how those students who will be there will be impacted by that construction.
Thank you. Yes, Mrs. Monaco.
I'd just like to make a couple of comments to clarify, at least my opinion as a school committee member. But I think my first choice would be to continue the model that we have, which is 4 individual schools. The problem that we run into is, can we get the state to pay for another 2 schools? And we don't know that. You know, it might take a very long time to get to the second one. They certainly won't pay for 2 together. But I think even more important, and it's a question that has yet to be answered, is whether or not we are able to build on the Pine Glen site. That's going to take an engineering study to determine whether or not we can build there, because as I understand, the land is low, perhaps has been filled.
It was a pond, yeah.
It was a pond, yeah. So I think in some respects, we're kind of jumping the gun because we don't even know if we can build on the Pine Glen site. If we can, my choice would be to continue a Pine Glen school and a Fox Hill school. If we are not able to build on the Pine Glen site and therefore have to either remodel, which is a possibility, instead of replace at Pine Glen, we could think about that. And then the other option is to go to Fox Hill for all of those students, and then you determine, do you want one huge building for everybody, or do you want two buildings on the same site with perhaps common space, but certainly separate administration, separate principals, separate teaching staff, all of that. So one of the things that's kind of holding me up in the whole decision-making process is, can we or can we not build on the Pine Glen site? And I think that should be our next step in determining this. Yes,
And just
Mr. Murphy.
Another follow-up, Chris. Anecdotally, you raised a concern about construction on a site that's being used scholastically. We actually did that at Memorial School and worked out pretty well, actually. It's kind of, I think the teachers use it as a learning tool for the kids. They kind of watch the whole construction process. They got to learn a little bit about it. And the practical problem is if you're not able to do that, then you have to find a place to put the kids for a year or two while the construction's going on, which becomes an issue as well. So, based on relatively limited experience, I don't share the concern that it's going to be a problem having the kids on the site, and it also might be an answer to a difficult logistical problem. So, I just urge people to keep their minds open maybe on that one.
But we're not there yet.
We're
Any
not there
other
yet.
Yeah.
questions, comments? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.
I also want to appreciate that I know there's a number of elected town officials here tonight, and I appreciate you coming out, because certainly this is a town-wide issue that's going to affect everyone. And would you like to come up, Mr. Sinesi? Please, thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having this meeting this evening. I'm coming at this from a couple of
Can you
different...
just say your name?
Oh,
for
I'm
the-
sorry.
for the
Adam
people?
Sinesi. I'm a resident of Town Line Road. I have a son that attended Pine Glen. I have a daughter that's in Fox Hill, and I've served in several boards in the town. And so I'm coming at this from a lot of different perspectives. First, I think both are good schools, Pine Glen and Fox Hill. But I also realize that coming down the pipeline, the town has a lot of spending priorities in the next 10 to 15 years that go beyond this project, including a new high school, including possibly a new police station. So I'm looking at this from a lot of different angles, and I think the most efficient and feasible angle is to do the 3-school model with both Pine Glen and Fox Hill being merged at the current Fox Hill location. Part of the reason how I came to this at this point in the process is that, one, as Mr. Murphy acknowledged, Fox Hill is one of the largest parcels of land in town, so it can accommodate the build-out while the children are still in their existing school structures, Pine Glen and Fox Hill respectively. The other thing that I look at is once the Pine Glen school, if it were to come down, it opens up a whole another group of possibilities. That land use is always an issue in this town, so that opens up the possibilities of open spaces, playgrounds, ball fields, affordable housing, senior housing, possibly a new police station. There's really, I mean, I'm not saying every one of those ideas is a good idea, but it does open up a can of worms that there's a need for, I guess. I guess the largest concern that I would have is I understand that if they were to merge schools, a lot of parents feel loyalty towards the teachers and the faculty, and I realize we're really ahead of the curve in this process. How would that be handled? Are there any thoughts to how the merger would? Very carefully.
I think it's probably too early, but if you want to make a stab at it, Dr. Conti.
No, again, Mr. Sinesi, we did some of that when we built the Memorial School because we doubled the size. So I think honestly, what we looked to do is we asked for some teacher volunteers, and we tried to communicate as best we could. There are operational aspects to every configuration that we have, and believe me, I don't like to redistrict because it just disrupts everything. So it's not like something I'm looking to do, but But you're right, even if we were to keep a 4-school model and we got support and we rebuilt, let's say, a new Fox Hill school on the Fox Hill site, it doesn't eliminate the renovation needs in this building nor the renovation needs at Pine Glen. So I just think we financially need to make sure that we're trying to do that, and we're going to need to have more elementary classrooms than we currently have. So if we build Fox Hill again, even if we keep 4, we might need to make that school more of a Francis Wyman size school. I'm trying to use examples that we have than the current Fox Hill school. So there are pros and cons to every possible configuration, and I do agree with some of the earlier comments. A larger school isn't necessarily more efficient, and the intention here isn't to reduce staffing. That's not the intention. I think, again, this committee has always supported smaller class sizes and the resources that we provide. So, we would just try to. The kids will adjust easiest in any change we make, and it just would be a matter of trying to communicate the why to the adults and make it happen. And it would be a very long on-ramp to that conversation. So that's kind of where we're at.
I also wanted to just address a comment you made about new high schools, because Dr. Conti referenced the cost of new high schools recently. And our high school project is not a new high school project, it's a renovation project. And at the moment, we're looking at about $75 million project, so that's just a very rough estimate.
Only
So-
$75 million.
Right, so, I mean, it isn't as much money as a new building, and we've made that argument to the state as well. But I just wanted to be clear that kind of money isn't right now on the table for these 3 schools that we're discussing, okay? Yes, Mr. Nelson.
Just one quick comment about the high school. The problem that we run into with the high school is the state doesn't prioritize towns that take good care of their buildings and simply want to renovate. They don't have a subcategory for communities that need money for renovation. They lump us all in with the communities that have explosive population growth and things of that nature, and so we always get down too far on the list to get approved. They only approve a certain number of them every year, as you know. So it looks like we might have to self-fund the high school renovation. It doesn't, after 7 or 8 submissions, it doesn't look like we're going to get the state to jump on board unless they were to change the statute and have 2 funds, one for communities that want to build and another separate fund for communities that want to renovate. And those communities that take good care of their buildings, like Burlington does, we kind of get penalized for doing such a good job. That's the unfortunate piece. So as a committee member looking at configurations, knowing that the town is probably going to have to self-fund the high school improvement, I'm not sure it's realistic to keep the 4-school model. I don't know if we can afford to do all of eventually a new building at Pine Glen, eventually a new building at the Fox Hill, and then self-fund the high school. So that's one of the driving reasons why we're looking at a 3-school configuration, I think, versus, in a perfect world, we'd love to have 4, put 2 new buildings on both sites gradually and then get the high school done. But I don't see that happening, unfortunately.
I tend to agree with you. Thank you.
All right,
Thank you, everyone.
Yes, okay, thank you. And
Can I just say something?
Yes, go ahead.
I just want to point out that somewhere in the back of the room, Selectman Joe Morandi and Selectman Jim Tiggs are here. And I spoke with them before the meeting. I want to thank them for being here to show their support. Recently, they did a tour with us of Pine Glen School of some of the programs there, and we had a great time. And I want to thank them for being here to show their support.
Thank you. Yes, so there's a couple of hands in the back there. So one of you want to come up and speak? All right, thank you. And again, if you could say your name for everyone at home who's listening. Thank you.
My name is Jennifer Burgess, and I'm a Burlington resident. I have 2 small children. My daughter's in 1st grade this year, and my youngest one is 3.5. She lives for the day that he will be in her school and has made the decision herself that he will have the same teacher she did in kindergarten. So I'm happy to hear that this process will take longer than just 2 years, because she would be very disappointed. She loves her school, and the sense of community she has gotten is wonderful. She sees older kids out in in town and recognizes them and has a great sense of her community in Burlington. I'm also a kindergarten special ed teacher in a neighboring town. I work in a preschool and kindergarten building. We are also looking at building changes and due to enrollment, the setup of the school safe, the conditions of the building. I didn't realize it until last year when my daughter was in kindergarten, how much my kindergarten students are missing out on that sense of community. So I feel strongly, there was the option of the preschool and kindergarten building. And the students are there for a year unless they were in preschool, and then they move on. They don't have the chance to have fourth grade partners or work with older students, and they miss out on so much. And all the teachers in my school are hoping for a combined early childhood building, pre-K to 2. Nobody wants a preschool kindergarten building.
Okay.
It just doesn't, the students move on. There's as best communication as we can between two schools, but there just isn't that sense of community in that small of a school. It's a small school, but just the 2 grades. So that was my only, otherwise I like the 2 schools with the small school sense, but I just am not a fan of the preschool kindergarten option. I love it every day. So.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you. Does anyone else have a comment? Okay. Thank you very much for your input. Yes, there was another hand in the back. Okay, there's actually several over there, so take turns and come on up.
Hi there.
Hi.
My name's Nikki Cadillac, and I have 2 girls in Fox Hill right now in I don't even know what grades they're in, 1st grade and 3rd grade. And another one on the way, which explains why I don't know what grades my other 2 children are in. I've also been a teacher and a school administrator for about 17 years, and I heard the question earlier about 2 separate schools on the same campus, and I have lived that at a couple different places. There are middle school and high schools, so it's a little bit different than having 2 separate elementary schools in the same campus, but they were able to work well together. The problem is, I think somebody was mentioning, operationally. It's really difficult depending on what facilities you're sharing. If it's a shared cafeteria, having 6 different lunch periods or 8 different lunch periods is really difficult. Same thing with recesses, depending on how many recesses you have per day. So that's just sort of my 2 cents about that. And then also, I think, as Jamie was saying earlier, the smallness of the schools is really what parents love about Burlington, and particularly Pine Glen and Fox Hill are such small schools that I would really, I think, especially after hearing all the other comments, if we were going to consolidate into a 3-campus model, would really love to see 2 small schools on the same campus. But then there's also all the operational stuff that happens. So that's just my
Good.
2 cents.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any comments or questions? Okay. Thank you
Thanks.
very much. And the next person from the back,
It's Joe Morandi.
Somebody else? Mr. Morandi, yes, would you like to come forward? Thank you.
Thank you. Just Joe Morandi, Chairman of the Board of Selectmen. Myself and Jim Tiggs came tonight to listen to the residents and the school committee discuss this issue. We did go to the school. We got to change name tags, by the way. Miss Monaco, Mr. Nelson.
Thank you.
That's Mrs. Monaco and Mr. Nelson.
You guys, it's a free world today. You can do whatever you like. Just going with that. We did tour the schools. I haven't been in school since 1976, so that says a lot right there. I was impressed by the schools that were there now. You could definitely see a need for new schools. Myself and Jimmy, when we got all done with this walkthrough, we heard a lot from different people, because you walk into the school and you actually know some of the kids that are there, and you know some of the teachers, and we got phone calls, myself and Jimmy, about the school sizes and what they're doing. I think this is great that you have the school, the residents here tonight to discuss what possibility could happen. I understand, Mr. Conte, you said between 3 to 6 years away anyway, maybe 7, possible depending upon the state issue. Money is always going to be coming from town meeting. We all know that they're the governing body, even though the Board of Selectmen is on top, but basically they are, when you really get down to it. If they tell us to change something, we have to change it. I just want to commend the school committee for what they're doing. I think it's time that the schools get done. Yes, we do need a new police station, there's no question about it. But we do have a new DPW bond coming in, a rec department coming in. So those 2 items have already been taken care of. And I think the next one on the agenda, which in my mind up until that meeting was a police station, until I saw the schools. Sorry, guys, I know you're listening to this, and I'm going to get a rash for this from the police department. I know I am, but that's okay. I can handle it. That's why I took the job. So I just want to commend all the parents that are behind me who I don't know. I think they're doing a great job. I think that any type of committee you can put together that would have the residents involved, maybe get 2 or 3 of them to get together and have that type of subcommittee for them to get them, so you don't have the same thing that we do sometimes at the Board of Selectmen, where people will repeat themselves for 17 different people all in a row. You can get input. The computer, doing it that way, I think is a great job. So I just want to commend you guys for doing the job, and I want to commend the residents back there for all their input that they're going to have and what they're going to end up doing. That's all I really had to say, and there will be no questions.
I want to thank you for your support,
Thank you.
and I want to ask if anyone has any comments or questions. No.
Comments I'll
Okay.
take, questions I'm out.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Let's see, in the blue sweater there, sweatshirt, something, there we go.
Hello, everyone. Name is Nicholas Dalilis. I've been a resident here for about 15 years. I have a son. He's in the 6th grade. He graduated from Fox Hill School, and I have 2 daughters in Fox Hill right now. And what I'd like to say is that my son, we actually moved from the Fox Hill district, from the Francis Wyman district. So halfway through, my son was in Francis Wyman. And when we made the move to Fox Hill, it changed him. Because of and I believe it's the fact that it was because there was like a smaller school. He was able to connect more with like the kids around him. He was able to make new friends very easily. And I think the structure of Fox Hill is amazing. My daughter there is in 1st grade. She was in kindergarten last year, moved to 1st grade. She has, she's a little bit of a slow learner, but the support that she has in Fox Hill is amazing. It just seems like there's just that small feel that I don't think you can get from like an 800-person school. I don't know anyone here, I don't know, I think the majority of the people are not in favor of having a big school on the Fox Hill site. I'm also not in favor of having 2 separate schools on the Fox Hill site as well. Logistic reasons, and also, I mean, it's a nightmare getting to Francis Wyman and Memorial, Marshall Simon, and Memorial in the morning. I don't think the neighborhood is actually equipped to handle the extra flow of traffic that goes to these schools. I understand the land is big. I share the same concern with the lady before me about having the kindergartens and the pre-K on one site and the grades 1 through 5 on a different site. My kindergartner actually loved her reading buddy, who was like a 4th grader, I think. And that transition from kindergarten to 1st grade is so big. I mean, you can't really, imagine the amount of support, looking up to her older brother, her older sister in the school, other kids. I mean, it's good. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that you can't really even put a dollar amount on what it actually would benefit the kids, right? We all know that the smaller schools, right, is the most beneficial. I understand money doesn't grow on trees. We have to find the money somewhere. But if I had to vote, I would Fox Hill and Pine Glen, they totally need renovation. I mean, I can't, they really need to be renovated. So at least renovation at that point. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Any questions or comments? I want to mention that we've kind of gone over our half hour here, but I do want people who have something additional they'd like to add. I feel like these comments have been really valuable, so I'm going to continue this. And the hands I see keep changing, but if the woman in the back row maybe could come up and speak. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Elizabeth Orfanos, and I live in the Fox Hill District, and I have 2 young children, 1 and 3. So they haven't entered the schools yet, but I can tell you that I returned to this community and bought my childhood home for these schools. Being a product of them, we have a wonderful community, we have a wonderful school system. I'm largely echoing a lot of what you hear.
Okay.
I think we see that we have a community that values small schools. I'm also an educator myself. I've worked in special ed for over 10 years and worked at the administrative level. And so a lot of my thoughts have to do with that special ed population. But I need to say that when we consider what is best for our special ed population, it often benefits our larger population. So it's an important consideration. One in particular is that when we create more transitions for our students, that's very challenging. It's challenging for the students, but it's challenging for the staff who have to communicate the needs of those students, particularly when they come with a team of specialists that they need to work with. And when that team can provide continuity across years, we actually did a study in my school where I worked with students from kindergarten to 5th grade, which benefited the students, benefited the parents, and the relationship we gained over those years. So that's something to consider in how many buildings we build, the transitions that are created, and the continuity of the education that we provide. Another piece I want to speak on is there's a body of research growing on the benefit of small schools. Obviously small classrooms, but small schools as well, in that academic performance decreases as schools grow, and academic performance increases when we have smaller schools. That's important information. But what I think is more important is school community and school culture. And I think we can all say that we attended school in a time and in a society that was very different than what we see today. So for our students to feel connected within their school community, to have a strong school culture, I believe is of the utmost importance. And I will say that's true for staff as well, having worked in both larger schools and smaller. I worked in a school that was similar in layout to Fox Hill in a neighboring community. I would say in worse condition possibly than Fox Hill, believe it or not, in the facilities. And I would take those facilities every day because of the people I worked with, because of the nature of the culture we had as a staff. And as a staff grows, as a building grows, you lose that. It all diminishes. And we even noticed it within the town when the building grew from a 1-story to a 2-story to a 3-story building. The connection among staff and students changed. And I know there's been comment on shared facilities. That's really something to consider. I can tell you that if you work in a building where you have, for lack of a better term, cafegimatorium, when you have that one space for your gym, for your lunch, for your auditorium, that I can tell you I had to create a master schedule K through 5 for special ed services, and student services was dictated by that one space. So they did not get the services they should have in a timely manner due to the shared facilities. So what those shared facilities would be, I'm not sure what they are, but you have to have real consideration over what that is and how it affects the logistics and the scheduling of our students' education. And I think, lastly, living in the Fox Hill neighborhood, I think a number of people here would echo the concern around traffic as well. It's, it is something to consider when you look at that neighborhood and the streets and how it is set up.
If you could wrap up.
Yes,
and,
but in
yeah.
conclusion, we have a great school system. I hope we can keep it to some small schools.
Yes. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Other comments? Thank you. No? All right. So I know, is there anyone else? There was a couple people in the corner there. No? Okay, so maybe if you could speak now. Okay, thank you. I know we got more people. I'm not trying to, yeah, go ahead.
Hi.
Hi.
Thank you. Jen Scanlon. I am in the Fox Hill community.
I have 3 kids. I have a 3rd grader, a 1st grader, and a 4-year-old that will be going to Fox Hill next year. So I share a lot of the same concerns. I'm not going to repeat everything. I like the 4-school model. I like the small classroom feel that I know everyone else here has liked a lot, and that's why we're in Burlington. I do feel very strongly that the smaller classroom feel and the smaller community setting builds a good, solid foundation for these kids not to be lost in the shuffle once they go into middle school and high school, where they can, they're a little bit older, they can hold their own in the academic setting. I did have a question regarding if you are able to build on the Pine Glen site and keep the 4-school model. What does that actually look like? I did had questions where, is it just is it a total rebuild of a Fox Hill and Pine Glen, or is it just adding extra space because?
I think we don't know the answer
Okay,
to that,
yeah.
unless Dr. Conti knows something I don't. But that's really, like we said from the beginning,
Yeah.
this is the very beginning. And if we got, further along, if we were looking at that space, then we would look into those kinds of questions. So we really, I don't think, can answer, but I think Dr. Conti wants to try.
The challenge is if we replace, we have to do something with the kids, right? Unless you all want to keep them for 2 years home, keep them home for 2 years. So,
Nope.
yeah, so I just think that's part of the challenge, or actually is logistical. To Mrs. Monaco's point, we would have to make sure that we could build on those sites and then move forward. It's just, it's very rare. The state did support 2 schools for us relatively close together with the Memorial School and the middle school. I think we were just very fortunate. I'm not sure they would do that again, but we could try. So if we put in a statement of interest and got an elementary school, say, approved next December, again, we can submit another statement, another priority the following April. We can put in another elementary school. So we could do that. So. We have to, again, make sure that we're there. One thing I just want to remind, maybe not to you, but everybody, is we're going to see enrollment pressure, even if we keep the 4 schools that we currently have. We need more classrooms. We only have 16 classrooms, essentially a grade. We are maxed out. And so Pine Glen is essentially a 3-section school, 3 classes at every grade. Memorial and Fox Hill are essentially 4. We have some fluctuations. And Francis Wyman is a 5. So that's basically where I'm getting my math. But we're at the point where we're going to need to start displacing music teachers and other classes. Or we're going to see upward pressure on our class sizes too. So I know people mention small schools and small class sizes, but even with the 4 schools, even keeping the 4 schools we have now, we don't have a lot of classroom space. We don't have any classroom spaces left. So that's why we're having this conversation. That doesn't mean there aren't modulars and other options that we have, but then that creates some of the community issues people mentioned as well, because they're sort of our add-ons and are not there as well. So I wish I could say here's the perfect solution and we could do this, but we have building needs, and we hopefully are going to get some state support, but we're also going to need, I think, some local support to do some of the work that we need to do too. But I don't know if we could build a completely separate school, for instance, on the Pine Glen site, while keeping Pine Glen up and running. Maybe we could, and that's what a designer, that's what an architect would let us know. It's
Okay.
not my skill set.
I do have one more question. With where I know, looking into the state funding as well, if you were to look at the 2 schools on a campus type setting at Fox Hill, is that considered one submission because it's 2 separate
Right.
schools, or is that considered?
We asked that question.
We did ask that question. We can only submit 1 school. So,
Okay.
but when they did their feasibility study, so when they would come out, let's say they accepted that we need an elementary school, we would do a feasibility study. One great thing about tonight is they're going to ask us all the same questions. They're going to ask us, have you considered a pre-KK? They basically go through this they go through a feasibility study. Part of that feasibility would be merging the 2 schools onto the 1 site. And if they felt that was the best use of state money, then they might prioritize that as part of their feasibility and then push that design. We could always say we don't want that, but then they would say, then you don't get state money. So I think there's always a part of a back and forth there. But we can't submit the replacement of 2 schools. We asked if we could do that, and they said no. We have to pick one.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have one more, I just thought of another one, I'm sorry. I appreciate, I'm not in the education field, so I appreciate everyone coming up that is a parent that is also in the education field. Have you thought to survey the teachers in Burlington as well? Okay.
And they are, there might be teachers here, in fact, there are teachers here tonight. So,
Okay,
yes, they've been
perfect.
invited as well to this conversation.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. I
Thank you.
appreciate it.
So if other people have something additional to ask or to add, I would invite you, Mrs. Saltman?
Whoops. Hi, I'm Myrna Saltman. I'm a town meeting member, and I sit on the Capital Budget Committee. And I'm also the person who brought the Bridges Together, the intergenerational program, into the school system here a few years ago, which has been tremendously successful. It's a wonderful program. So when I started that program, I was surprised when I went into the classrooms that we only had approximately 14 kids in an elementary school classroom. And that seemed low to me, but you know, I've been out of school for a number of years now. In listening to all the wonderful comments tonight, and I commend all the involved parents, because that's what you have to be, I'm not hearing very many details in numbers. The devil is in the details. And Dr. Conti has shared that we have about 3,500 kids in the total schools, and I know we have the 4 elementary schools, but 14 kids in a classroom, and Mr. Kuna, you corrected me when you looked at your computer at a curriculum, a capital budget committee, that the average class size is 15 kids. You may not remember that, but I do. But the point being that you're saying that we don't have space for more classrooms. Well, how about putting more kids in the classroom? I mean, I called my girlfriend tonight. We've been friends since first grade. She teaches at the graduate level at Lesley University. And I said, how many kids average are in a class, an elementary school size that's workable? She said, well, it's usually 20 to 22, but we prefer 18. That would be better. Well, we're blessed, and I thank you for the blessing, all of you, 14. But before we go rushing to build new schools, maybe we should look at the prospect of increasing some of the sizes of the classrooms. That's all I want to say.
So I would like to first respond that it is really a priority of the people on this committee to have small class sizes. And I'm going to also, I think there also are variations, because when you look at averages, you have classes like a grade that doesn't happen to have a lot of students might have class sizes that would be smaller, and a grade, you know, so if there were 14 in a certain grade, there might be 20 in another grade, and so, that kind of thing. But I'm going to let Dr. Conti answer those. I think there's some misleading things when you look at averages, and also when you look at if you're counting special education classrooms, which have other requirements and can't have more than 8 students per teacher and 12 students per classroom. And so there are things that affect that kind of number that people kind of latch onto. But I will let Dr. Conti or Mr. Cuna comment if you would, please.
No, we can, I just want to give you some numbers. So district-wide, so K to 5, where basically 18 to 1 is our average. But again, average is deceiving. If we have a small class, so for instance, I just want to make sure I'm trying to remember this, I think is that Pine Glen 5th grade only has 2 sections, not 3. So if we have a smaller class, we do contract and move people around. But we also had some complaints because I think Francis Wyman 3rd grade, Fox Hill 3rd grade, we have 21, 22. So and even if we were to add or had the funding to add a 6th teacher at Francis Wyman and a 5th teacher at Fox Hill for that grade, I'm not sure we would have a classroom without displacing someone else to do that. So we might have had a class of 14 on that day or at that time. So I'm sure that's true. But presently, we're 18 to 1, K to 5. And the school committee, when we create our budgets, the school committee really stresses to me to really try to keep that 18 to 1 number sort of in terms of the staffing that we have. And I'm going to have a difficult time maintaining that because I don't have any more classrooms.
Well, thank you.
And I think Mrs. Russo had a comment.
Yes.
So, I have a son, daughter. My son, who's already graduated, was in one of the largest classes to come through the school system. He had a section of 5 at Fox Hill, and there were over 20 in every one of those sections. My youngest was the 14. She was 3 sections, they were 14, Fox Hill. Her grade is the smallest to have come through the school system. So it went from the largest, petered down that class of 2000, class of babies of 2000, and then 2002, and then it dwindled back down. So my youngest was at 14. They had 3 classes at Fox Hill, grade-wise, for 52 kids. So if we went back and forth, they combined them, you would have had 2 classes of 26. So it was really, you know, first grade, second grade, third grade. So basically, the teachers really tried to enjoy that year because they knew it was not happening again very soon. So that 14 was there, and since her class, it's now picked up, and we're starting to look at those class sizes grow. So it was abnormal. My daughter, I think, really got a lot out of that small class size, but that is definitely not something that we look to, but we were kind of stuck by combining 2 and getting 26. So it happened, not by design necessarily.
It's based on the parents, right?
Well,
Okay, we'll
and
say-
I was going to say, I think that this is, the tension that we have in town, where there would be people who'd say, well, why don't we have all the classes, 25 kids in a class? Because I know there are districts right next to us that have 25
that is
kids in an
true.
elementary school classroom. And it may be the priority for some people in town that we just increase our class sizes, and then we maybe wouldn't be so pressured for new classroom space in our elementary schools. But I also know in the 5 years I've been on this committee, and I feel the same way, that there is a commitment among the school committee to try to keep our class sizes even lower, K to 2, and a little bit larger, 3 to 5. And in fact, as Dr. Conti referred, we had parents of third graders, this year's third graders at both the Fox Hill and at Francis Wyman. Because they went from second grade to third, that guideline was kind of a little larger, so their students, their children were going from class sizes that were a little bit smaller to a little bit larger, and they were very concerned and were hoping that we could add an additional classroom teacher at the third grade at both of those schools. So it is something that the parents in Burlington want. It's something that the school committee wants. It's something that costs money and involves how much space we have in the classrooms. So it's an issue. It's an important issue that not everyone's going to always agree on. But that's sort of how we got to where we are now, I would say. And Dr. Conti, I saw you.
Yes,
Did you
Madam
want to say
Chair.
something
Again,
else?
Ms. Altman, I just want to give you some rough numbers. So if we look at Pine Glen is about 58,000 square feet, and Fox Hill is roughly 64,000 square feet. And I know we need more space than that, so I'm just using this as an example. We looked at current elementary schools being built, and it's about $464 a square foot. So that's just to replace Pine Glen and Fox Hill to the size that they are now is $56.6 million.
For both schools together?
Both schools, all the square footage of Pine Glen and Fox Hill with the current building prices. And again, if we're talking building 5 years away, prices seem to only go up. We got a little lucky with Memorial because the economy crashed, and I don't want to wish that the economy crashed. But so again, it's significant. So that's all. That's why we have to be careful. But Ms. Altman, you wanted numbers. We're always looking at that price, and it just seems really recently building prices have really escalated.
Thank you for sharing that, and I think that's something, the numbers should be shared with the public at large, because we all pay our taxes here in town to support our wonderful schools. And the school committee is very generous to the students based on my own grandchildren and comparisons. Burlington students do not pay for extra
Right.
special sports, activities, whatever. So, you know, it's wonderful we can sustain that. But the population in this town is a large percent of older people, and, you know, money is always a concern when you're not gainfully employed. So you have to put all those figures into the calculations, and I hope you will consider that as you move forward with whatever the right plan is. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So again, if you have something additional you'd like to say in the light blue shirt, if you'd like to come up. It's a twofer.
My name is Megan Dvoychuk, co-president of the Burlington CPAC.
And I'm Elizabeth Mello, also co-president of the CPAC.
Our concern with the transition of schools and things moving around, I think mine lies in the combination of pre-K and K together at Pine Glen, excuse me. I think that there are a lot of different classrooms that are set in different buildings, the sub-separate programs. I'm not sure that the Pine Glen facility would be able to accommodate all of the different classrooms that are at the elementary school level across the district without compromising opportunities for inclusion that would be equal to or greater than what exists now. I think it would also increase transitions for students, and I think that that model itself is just not appropriate for our students.
Okay, thank you. Did you want to add something?
No, I mean, I think the only thing to add is that, you know, as we move through this process, and I recognize it's a long process, is that we're not kind of taking into consideration our special needs students.
Thank you.
And making sure that's at the forefront.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks for all you do with the parents and the families that need that help, support. Yes, somebody over there in the dark blue. Yes, you, yes. Okay.
It's black.
Oh, it's black, sorry.
Hi.
Actually, I just want to comment, I'm going to interrupt for just a second. I want to thank Mr. Cuna and the contractors who put in the new lights in this building, in this room. We've just replaced our old fluorescent bulbs with LED lights, and it really has actually changed what the rooms look like. So maybe that's why I thought you were wearing a blue shirt, a blue
I
sweater.
could have been wrong. I often
Okay.
confuse the two.
Thanks.
So my name is Nicole Niedermeyer. I live on Fox Hill Road. I grew up in the Fox Hill neighborhood. I went to the schools. I went to Fox Hill School myself. My children go there. I'm coming more of a, I'm actually mortgaged to the gills, so I'll always live on Fox Hill Road. And I'm concerned about the impact to my daily life with the amount of traffic that will be brought in by a mega school, 2 schools or whatever, how many schools. How many of you currently live on Fox Hill, Donald, or Westwood Road up here? None.
Nope.
So I
Okay.
experience every day,
Yeah.
I walk my kids to Fox Hill School, and the amount of traffic and the speed at which people go down the road, even with the speed bumps, is ridiculous. My neighbor actually parks in front of her house to slow people down.
Yeah.
She's here.
Yeah.
And Donald Road is worse. And I am concerned, we are the only school in the entire town that is not on a main road. And then to double the amount of people coming in to the neighborhood, I'm just concerned about safety and quality of life.
It's an important issue, thank you. All right, is there, yes, in the front row there, thank you.
I don't know, it might be.
How's it going? My name's Matt Marino.
Hi.
My question is, and I apologize if this is published somewhere and I've just missed it. The enrollment pressure, is it concentrated in any one particular district?
Dr. Conti, if you could
No,
respond.
with the elementary schools, we're actually been very lucky. It seems to be relatively evenly distributed. When we built Memorial, double the size, we left, and we redistricted, excuse me, I'm tired. We left a lot of space at Fox Hill. So for those of you who are Fox Hill parents or you've had Fox Hill students, we've really seen that enrollment grow because we left classroom space. Fox Hill now has more students enrolled than Memorial School. So we sort of have kind of maxed out where we are. We're seeing more construction though at Corporate Drive, which is I want to point the right way, is towards the down 3A Cambridge Street, towards the mall that way. And we're seeing more construction over on the 3rd Ave, 2nd Ave places as well. So I'm a little bit concerned. We don't get huge numbers of students there yet, but with new construction always comes kids. And so we're trying to figure that out a little bit, because it would be, we'd have to distribute those kids, try to distribute them as evenly as we can. And then that causes some transportation challenges as well. So I have a feeling we're going to see some enrollment pressure. Wherever you see sort of the tear downs and the new houses going up, we tend to see enrollment pressures there. We've sort of absorbed most of that, but I have some concerns about Francis Wyman in the future, just because of the building that seems to be happening, the residential building that seems to be happening in areas of town that have not been residential. And again, I haven't been here that long, so someone said they were here 50 years. I'm not saying I know exactly what's going on, but it seems to be there's more residential building in areas where we haven't had it before. So I think we're concerned about that.
Got it.
All right, thank you.
Appreciate it.
So I'd like to try to wrap up this part. Mrs. Monaco, yeah.
I just want to make one quick point. I think that Nicole's comment about the traffic is one that we should take very seriously, and so it gives even more weight to my question about whether or not we can rebuild on Pine Glen.
So, again, I don't want anyone to leave here feeling like they couldn't speak, but it's been a while. We will have other opportunities for people to speak in the future. You can add comments on the survey. You can send us emails. We will continue to have this conversation at our future school committee meetings. People are always welcome to come either during public participation time, or in the case of us having this on the agenda, which we plan to do for a long time, to speak during this item. So any one last thing that somebody feels hasn't been raised, I would want to invite. And otherwise, I would like to see if the school committee has any other comments tonight about, yes, Mrs. Russo.
I just want to reiterate that we had over 500 submissions from the survey, so please, that it has not gone unnoticed, and we'll be reviewing all of those along with the public comment. So thank you. And if you go home, think of something after, that's always me. I go home like, oh, wait, what about this? Please feel free to pull up the survey. Please feel free to email and keep the thoughts coming. Thank you.
So big upcoming dates, usually right before winter break is when the state informs us whether they will move our project forward. So again, the current one is the high school, so we'll know right before break. I think they do that on purpose. Regardless of the outcome, if they move the high school forward, we obviously have work to do there. Then we have to go through the feasibility and design process. That starts the 6-year clock. But if we don't get the high school, then we'll be working on an elementary submission for April. That's when sort of the next part of the clock is. We don't have to have all of this decided by April. I just want to stress that again. We don't have to have all this decided by April. All we are asking for is the state to say we need an elementary school, and they're willing to put money towards that elementary school. And then if they agree a year from this December, that's really when we would start to make sure that we have to answer some of these questions. So it's just for everyone's thoughts and timing.
And again, I want to thank everyone who came tonight and spoke. I want to thank everyone who's taken the survey and submitted their comments. We will be reading all of those comments, and we welcome any additional input over the time. Thank you very much for coming. And so now we will move to our next item on our agenda, which is regarding okay, we'll give you folks a minute. And okay, so the next item on the agenda is about a program called Respectfully, that is a campaign being put out by the Lieutenant Governor Polito's office. And Whoa, the noise got louder. I thought we'd get quieter, but that's okay. So it's a program to help young people learn about healthy relationships, both platonic and romantic relationships. And I recently was reminded of this when I was at the school committee conference last week. There were people who've been working on these issues for many years, and I respect a lot, and they were supporting this program. It involves some curricular materials. It involves some videos for kids. Sometimes when we talked about healthy relationships in the past, you know, the things that I may have grown up with are no longer going on because kids are off in their rooms with their cell phones, and parents aren't always able to be aware. The one video I watched was about 3 kids in one of the kids' bedrooms. On their cell phones, a kid starts sending mean things to her friend, and the other kids are modeling, gee, you should talk to your friend. You shouldn't be sending those mean messages. How do you develop healthy friendships? How do you develop healthy relationships? So this campaign, respectfully, has also asked that school districts and school committees support with a resolution that because of the need for highlighting healthy relationships and educating youth, that we would then become a respectful school district. And the school committee, you know, we've had a chance to look, but this is something that we may need more time to consider. So I wanted to know tonight if school committee members had any questions or thoughts on it, or if we wanted to just think about it for our next meeting. Yes, Mr. Nelson.
Yeah, I see a note here in our materials that says Mr. Larkin and Mr. Adubato are reviewing it to consider whether they think we should include any of it in our district-wide curriculum. I just was wondering, Patrick, if you had a chance to think about that and look into it, and what your thoughts are.
I know the high school bridge program has already picked some modules they were going to do this year with the students, and we're also reviewing it with Mr. Jackling to see where it fits into the health curriculum. But immediately, Mrs. Conceição in the bridge program has picked 4 modules that she's going to do with those students starting after Thanksgiving.
How about other students in the school?
And we're going to share it with the middle school, but we haven't. Again, it's something relatively new on our radar this year, and so we're just in the process of looking it over. But it will give us some good input with Mrs. Conceição when she runs it with the bridge students, just to get some feedback after she's been through a few of the modules.
Do you think we should wait before we adopt the resolution?
No, I mean, the stuff looks very, very good. It's
Yeah.
just a matter of fitting it in. So no, I have no problem with you adopting the resolution.
I know we're always talking.
I sent it in a separate
Oh,
email,
all right.
but
If you wanna
if
take some
people
time,
want
so
to
you have a
look
chance
at
to
it.
look at it.
You have copies,
Yeah.
Mrs.
I mean,
Gilbert, thank you.
we're always raising concerns about the youth risk behavior survey, and I think this kind of feeds into that, so. I don't have a problem voting on it tonight or at our next meeting.
Would folks like me to read it, or? Oh, okay. Yes, question.
So with regard to the respectfully curriculum, because in looking through it, it looks similar to some of the curriculum that they've done in 5th grade, the health curriculum and wellness curriculum. Does any of that transfer over, or does it need to be specifically the respectfully curriculum?
No, it's set up in modules, so I think we can choose, if we find voids in our current curriculum, we could choose a module and plug it in. So that's kind of what we're in the process of doing.
Okay.
Is seeing if there's modules that are here that aren't part of what we do, and then where do we fit those in?
Okay, thank you.
Also, it's my understanding that this is not something that's a set curriculum that we are adopting, but rather a resolution that we as a district support this campaign to promote healthy relationships. And as a curriculum area, we can choose which parts we want. So it isn't us determining what curriculum we're going to be adding, but rather a support for this campaign to help kids develop healthier relationships.
Madam Chair, I would make a
Yes.
motion that the Burlington School Committee adopt the resolution I guess, designating the Burlington school system as a respectful school district.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
Yes.
Yes.
Patrick, I don't know if you're the designated person to come up with implementation of this, but I would like to suggest that whoever works on this, which could simply be, you know, oh yeah, we adopted it and nobody pays any attention to it, right? The places where I have seen a need for this kind of effort is relative to special education children, especially in my experience, those at the high school who may exhibit personalities or behavior or some whatevers that are not exactly typical. You know, they may not quite fit in with their peer groups. And I would like to see an effort to treat those individuals respectfully, and an effort to educate all of our students to make that a goal and to actually work on that. So, you know, in addition to doing it in this program and that program and various modules, I'd really like to see an effort on making our students aware that it's very important how they treat any individual who's a little bit different. It's my 2 cents.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Yes, Dr. Conti.
No, just Madam Chair, I think we should just read the resolution quickly.
Read
That's
it?
all. So
Okay.
I can do that if you'd like. So
Sure.
a resolution to designate Burlington as a respectful school district. Whereas the Governor's Council to address sexual assault and domestic violence in partnership with the Executive Office of Health and Human Services and the Massachusetts State Legislature has recommended increased support for awareness and prevention efforts with the goal of reducing the number of individuals who experience sexual assault and domestic violence in their lives. Whereas the Commonwealth of Massachusetts developed a public awareness and prevention campaign, respectfully, in quotes, highlighting healthy relationships for Massachusetts youth aged 12 through 18. Whereas it is important to educate youth about the value of respect and characteristics of healthy and unhealthy relationships. Whereas the key message of the Respectfully campaign is that everyone deserves respect, honesty, and open communication. Whereas youth-serving individuals and organizations can encourage parents and caregivers to be aware of the signs of unhealthy behaviors, educate youth on what respect looks like, and have clear conversations about consent. Whereas parents and caregivers can help lower the risk for teens experiencing unhealthy or abusive relationships by having open, honest, non-judgmental, and continuous conversations with youth about respect in friendships and romantic relationships. Now therefore be it resolved that the Burlington School Committee designate the Burlington Public School District a respectful school district in support of Respectfully, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Public Awareness and Prevention Campaign.
Okay, any further discussion? Sorry, any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. Oh, opposed and abstained? Chair votes aye, that's 5-0-0. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda is the monthly financials, and shall I pass this over to Ms. Kasha? Okay, thank you.
So all of you received last week the financial update as of 10/31. I don't know if I just want to field questions or if you guys want me to walk through it.
Would you like to just summarize in a couple of sentences?
Sure.
What you've seen?
So our revolving funds are looking fine. The only deficit showing on here is school lunch, but again, that's due to the lagging state reimbursements, which is usually comes in around 33,000, so no concerns there. On the following pages, you have your, just have on my screen. Sorry, my screen just went blank. On the following pages, You have the operating budget, followed by accommodated, with one column for budget, spent and encumbered, our projections as of 10/31, and the remaining budgeted amounts.
And those numbers look appropriate to you for this time of year?
Yeah, no concerns right now.
Okay, thank you. Any comments from the school committee?
Yeah,
Mr.
Just a couple of comments. I was very encouraged by the revolving fund summary. And when I saw the balance for the school lunch program, I made a comment, that's not bad, you know, because next month we'll probably catch up, and it looks like we're on really a good path. I guess a question for Dr. Conti or Mr. Cooner on the building rentals. I know that number has been higher in the past, but are we catching up on that building rental account? Because I know we use the lion's share of that in the summertime to take care of, you know, the schools. Are you comfortable with that number, Bob? Or the 211,000 on the building rentals on the revolving fund?
Well, again, comfortable is a relative term, obviously. So as long as we don't have large projects that would absorb a lot of it, I'm comfortable with what's there. Obviously, it's relative too to how much rental income is coming in versus how much is going out on repairs. So we've been not taking in as much as we've been spending, so that's why that balance is kind of minimally increasing right now. But again, the projects that we've been working on have more been funded through warrant articles and whatnot, so I think we have a little bit of time to watch that grow, hopefully before we get hit with anything major.
I think-
Dr. Conti?
No, Mr. Nelson, I think your direct question is, will that account be able to support the summer custodial salaries? So I think that's what we're,
I think Bob's saying it depends on whether we get hit with any repairs, but what do we normally need in that account, Bob, for summer?
Just for summer alone?
Yeah,
Right around 100.
okay.
Sorry, I wasn't to the mic, but.
Okay, so that's encouraging. The other question I had, we're looking, and this is for Dr. Conti, I think, looking at the elementary before and after school program. We've got a pretty high ending balance. Looks like it's a little over $1 million. Do you think it's time to think about lowering the tuition, Eric? Or that's a, seems like a big number.
it is, I guess I would have to see at what point, sort of where we are in the process. This is just a snapshot, so we'd have to see. We were carrying a balance because we went from one location to 5 locations, so we had been expanding. And so it might be time to think about that. We've also added financial aid, and we've added staffing, because we've added a nurse, and I think we still might need to add another nurse. So I think we're also adding staff. So let me do some more work, but I think that's something
Well, I
that
don't want you to do a ton
we
of,
should consider.
maybe in the spring, we can take another look at it and have a conversation about.
Yeah,
It seems
all
like a
I'm
lot of
saying is,
effort.
I'm not sure that's I mean, that is the exact right number, but we might have some of that already accounted for and
Encumbered.
spent already, so I just want to
Okay.
make sure that it may not be as high as it looks on paper.
Ms. Kasha, do you have any light to shed on that at this moment, or not particularly?
And
The
I
balance.
think that, I think, for the most part, the large balance in this is something that sort of has been on the radar, because
Okay.
these are supposed to be self-sustaining programs. They're not supposed to be making profits,
Mhm.
supposed to sort of be a break even.
Mhm.
So that is something to,
Okay.
that we'll look
Is-
into more.
Is it also possible that it's like, this snapshot was before payroll went out, or, that kind of thing?
Yeah, or
Something-
just before they finish collecting for, the month, the full month,
Yeah.
or, so all those timing differences do have an effect on these balances.
So it sounds like you have an eye on it, and we'll be revisiting it as we go through the year if we need to.
Yes, it's always been an account that has been healthy, and we've taken a larger offset to the operating budget as we've expanded. But again, I get your point, we need to look at it. I just, we've been in the expansion mode the last 3 or 4 years, so I think now we'll have to look at where we're at.
Okay.
Yes, Mrs. Monica.
Since I accused Steve of being crazy at that suggestion, I would like to just say that I think there are expenditures that we need to make for the after-school program. And
Yes.
one is a nurse
Yes.
that is able to travel or,
An additional nurse.
Yeah,
Yes.
and possibly more than one. I don't know that, but I'm just suggesting that there are a lot of changes that I think we're on the verge of, as we incorporate varied students into that program.
Yes.
Any other, yes, Mrs. Russo?
So I have a different question regarding that, and I tried to go back through our policies that we have been implementing. Is for the revolving funds, is there a high limit that when it gets hit, that we need to do something, take out money, record? Is there any ceiling on what is in revolving funds?
No, there's no caps for these.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Any further questions from the school committee? No. Okay, yes, Mr. Eiler?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Had a few questions. I sort of had the opposite reaction looking at school lunch. I don't know that it's a problem, but relative to last month, the deficit went up by 3,000, I believe. So it's actually diverging from break even rather than approaching break even. So I was just curious if we imagine that this is sort of a typical run rate, or do we imagine this balance going towards zero for some reason because this month is anomalous, or what's our expectation there?
Ms. Kasha, can you respond?
So I don't have last month's in front of me. There might have been like a receipts received but not yet posted.
I'm assuming that's sort of constant, though. It was negative 29,000 last month, and it's negative 32,000 this month. So I'm assuming that sort of given that same time of month, the outstanding payments and so on would be probably similar, I'm guessing. But
Yeah, so the state reimbursement monthly average is usually between 32 and 34,000. So I guess my point on this is that I don't have a concern as of this point where our average monthly receipts would cover that.
okay, yeah, I mean, if it hovers around that amount and it doesn't go up, then we'll catch up on that final payment. So
Yep.
we just need to make sure it doesn't keep getting further in the red, I guess is the point.
Right, and we have 2 months coming up that are very disjointed, and we don't serve as many lunches. So November is just a tough month to begin with, and then with winter break in December. So so that also disrupts the pattern.
Okay, don't know it's an issue now. I was also looking at the before and after school balance, which is obviously growing over time by the looks of it. I'm curious, well, I guess the question is, what expenses are counted against that, and are we properly applying all expenses that actually could go to that? So for instance, is a portion of the utilities, custodial fees and all that, is that part of the expense of that program already, or?
Yes, Dr.
Yes,
Conti.
so it is, and I think when we do the fiscal '21 budget, you'll see an offset for before and after school programmatic space in that, and Nicole has a whole formula that incorporates all of that.
Okay, so it's carrying its load of the proper operating budget amount.
Yes.
Okay, and then the final question was in the accommodated accounts. This is just sort of an understanding thing. It looks like the main difference appears to be that in September, money that was in teachers' special education line item 68, it looks like that got moved over, very broadly speaking, to general education aids. So I'm just curious, is that some change in personnel, or? I'm just sort of looking at the offsetting changes between the two, and that seems to be the biggest one.
Sure.
Yes,
So
Ms.
I'd have to go back to look at specifically what changes. At the start of the school year, obviously, there's a ton of personnel changes and movement. So I'd have to look back to see exactly what that was. But this is the most accurate current information.
Okay, but yeah, I guess the general question is.
It could have been a reclass or.
Was there any particular, personnel changes in terms of hiring or moving people around, or it's more a reclassification, better understanding issue?
There were no major personnel
No
changes.
major personnel
to
changes.
those programs.
Okay, great, thank you.
So maybe, could we ask you for our next meeting, if there is something distinct? And actually, that'll be another report on the monthly financial, because we don't meet again until December. Maybe at the next meeting, if you could just, check that area and see if there is something specific. Okay, thank you. Other questions from Ways and Means? Are there questions from anyone else who's here tonight? Yes, please come up.
Hi. My name is Carrie McConnell. I have a daughter that uses the after-school program. I was just wondering, I'm not sure even if this is something to ask to bring here, but is there a way to maybe use any of that money to establish a way to pay online for the parents, so we don't have to send in a check?
We're looking at that now, so,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yes, thank you. That's a good suggestion. All right, and I know, I do know that Dr. Conti we've been looking into that, so that's good. Yes, okay. Other
Elizabeth
questions?
Miller.
Yes, please come up. Thank you.
So Elizabeth Mello, and I'm here as a parent and thinking about that after-school windfall, if you will. I have a child who's been in the after-school program who has significant needs, and the after-school program has been fantastic at meeting those needs and working with her. She's there 3 days a week, and wonderful staff, and loves that community. But one of the things that we miss out on frequently is she's not included in field trips because transportation for her would be so expensive because they'd have to get a vehicle to transport a wheelchair. So I've never really made it a big issue. I kind of just worked around it. But it's something to think about. Are we, as a community in that program, meeting the needs of all the students? I have heard of parents whose children haven't been able to go on certain field trips for behaviors and that kind of stuff. So thinking about, is there some of that funding that could go into funding those services so that kids get the supports they need to participate in those activities?
Thank you very much. And Mrs. Monica, do you wanna-
Are you referring to field trips taken by the after-school program?
Yes, so for example, on school vacation weeks, when they run programming, they oftentimes go off-site for various activities. Over the summer, the same thing in their summer camp program. And I've just really worked our schedule around their schedule, and that's okay. There are some things that I think she would love, and there are other things that I think might not be something that she'd particularly enjoy, being out in the community for 4 or 5 hours doing something. But there are times, for example, one day last week, Wednesday, they were out on a field trip, so they couldn't accommodate her Wednesday afternoon because their field trip didn't get back in time. You know what I mean? Like, so she would get there. She didn't have the day off because she's in an alternative school setting.
Right.
So when she got to, when she would have usually gotten to the program, there was nobody there to take her. You know what I'm saying? So there are those kind of things that I feel like I work closely with the program, so I'm willing to kind of work that way with them. But I think it is one of those things, if there are funds available, is kind of looking at that and what are we doing to make sure that all kids have access to stuff.
It certainly sounds reasonable.
Yeah, I think that's a great thing to look into. If there is funding for it, it's something that I'd support using money for. Good, thank you for that
Thank you.
idea. Are there any other comments or questions on the financial reports? Okay, so the next item on the agenda is our elementary report card and parent conference reminder. Dr. Conti?
Again, just a very simple reminder, and we sent a reminder to all parents and actually to all staff that we're piloting this year, going from 3 report cards and 1 parent conference to 2 report cards and 2 parent conferences. So it was honestly just a simple reminder that we've already had 1 parent conference, and I did get your letter about that. And we have a report card in January, a conference in the March timeframe that we're still working out the details, and then a report card at the end of the year.
Okay. Is there any comment from the school committee?
No.
Is there comment from the public? Yes, Ms. Marcus.
Diana Marcus, President of the Burlington Educators Association. I just wanted to make it clear that this is still an open issue that we're dealing with the district, due to the fact that parents were, an announcement was made regarding the arrangements for these spring conferences before teachers were informed of it. Additionally, there was no bargaining of the impact of this or the way in which it would be carried out. We certainly agreed in principle to have an additional set of conferences, but we made it very clear that we had to know how it was going to work out, what logistics were going to be, and at no point has the union been brought into that conversation regarding the hours or the logistics that and the working conditions that go with that.
Okay.
So we will be, we have informed that from our perspective, this is an unfair labor practice, and we'll be moving forward from there.
Okay, thank you. All right. Okay, the next item is the policy review for the policy manual, which is separate from an item later in the agenda. This is regarding our ongoing review of the policies of the school committee. Dr. Conti has suggested that we we've looked through one section, Section E, and that we look through the Section G, which is a lot of policies referring to students. We have a number of these policies in place, and we also have, there are policies that are recommended as possible items that Mrs. Monaco and I will be reviewing, looking through them to identify which of these we feel might need to be revised or updated that we have, and also if there are additional policies that we do not have now that we think would be valuable to the school district. Are there any other comments from the committee regarding this? We don't have a report because this is just announcing what we'll be working on. Okay? No. All right. And the next item is old business. We've been discussing actually, I think there's sort of two issues, but we've been discussing the athletic field maintenance issue, which a lot of our maintenance is done through the rec department, and we've been using organic methods and materials, and there's been a question about whether we want to shift that a bit. And we've talked about it a few times, but I know that Mrs. Russo, would you be willing to give a little report, because you have some updated information? Thank you.
So I spoke with Brian from Tom Irwin, which is the company that the rec department has been using for the fields fertilization and maintenance. We had very good conversation. I was concerned about specific chemicals in certain applications that they were proposing. He explained that the company does not lean one way or another towards pesticide use, organic use. They want to maintain a healthy turf field. He was definitely in favor of organics. They do have communities that use all organics. They have communities that use a hybrid, and they have ones that are more pesticide driven. So after explaining, showing him the different things in the MSDS sheets of the chemicals, where my concerns were, what the trade secret chemicals were showing as. They are not tested all together, they're tested individually. I asked for 3 different proposals to be brought forth, and this is based on conversations we've had at this table. The first being currently presented with the man hours and the cost, and that is using these chemicals being presented with some organics. The other proposal, all organics, which is going to require more man hours, more different aeration, seeding, timing-wise also. So using all organic, what's that going to cost, and again, what the man hours are going to be. And then a proposal that takes out the 2 main concerns, 24-D, and the other chemicals that I was concerned with, and seeing, is there a less toxic, I don't even like saying that, alternative that can be applied that would not have the same effectiveness right away, but over time, it would require more of the organics, and seeing that man-hour and cost. He said he would be able to present that to Mr. Egan. Am I saying the last name right?
Yep.
Egan. And Tom being the one working with him, Mr. Murphy. So he would have that by the end of the month, those 3 proposals for them to start looking at, and then for the board to discuss also. So really getting the costs and the man-hours and what those 3 proposals will look like. And then potentially from there, we can work with the rec department moving forward for what our comfort level is. But they definitely have expertise in all organics in some towns neighboring. So I felt very comfortable with that they are maintaining that way too.
Okay. Are there other comments? Yes, Mr. Murphy.
Just by way of background for some of you who might be coming to the discussion late, the rec department last year previously had been in the same all-organic policy as we have in the school fields. They hired this Tom Irwin and Brian last year, and he used, they shifted from the all-organic a bit. They use some weed killer, and they have an innocuous sounding name to it, but it's still a weed killer. In addition to the enhanced maintenance procedures that Kristen mentioned. And I think if anybody's been out on Simon's Park field, they do it at Simon's Park, they do it at Wildwood. Last year, this year they started it at Rahanis, and I think they're going to be doing Regan Field, and maybe behind the center school, I believe. In any event, it's been very successful. It's the quality of the grass is noticeably better. So I'm the school rep on the Recreation Commission, and they asked me to approach the school committee about maybe modifying our all-organic policy, because we do have some town-wide fields that are on school grounds, namely Francis Wyman in the middle school, the two largest ones. And so in any event, I brought it back to the school committee, and there was some concern about making that switch, and that's kind of been an ongoing discussion and investigation, and Kristen's been kind of spearheading that. So from a recreation standpoint, they were comfortable with what they learned from Tom Irwin and when they adopted this new procedures last summer. And I've made it known to them that we're still kind of looking into it, and we haven't officially made any sort of decision as whether to adopt this or not. And we'll continue to work through Kristen with Tom Irwin and to address concerns by some of the committee members on that. But like I said, I don't know much about grass and agriculture and all that type of thing, but just from an eyeball test and from feeling that the ground itself, there's clearly a benefit and an improvement in the field quality. So I can understand the rec department's desire to use the same treatment in the school fields, and I guess we're going to continue to look into that. But just in case somebody had tuned in for the first time tonight.
Thank you for that background. That's helpful. Yes, Mr.
Yeah,
Nelson.
just a quick follow-up, Madam Chair. Tom and I attended a subcommittee meeting with Brian. I think it went almost 2 hours, and we asked a lot of questions, and Kristen's following up with some additional questions. But I just want to point out that when what Brian is talking about in terms of pesticides, it's an application that would take place in June when the kids are out of school, and if needed, probably in August when the kids are still out of school. And we were talking about closing down the schools for a week, and from what Brian. Closing down the use of the fields,
yeah.
excuse me, for a week. And what Brian had indicated to Tom and I during our subcommittee meeting was that the the chemicals that they put on to do the weed treatment, they dissipate generally within 24 hours. So that's something to factor in. We had conversations about, continuing on with the all organic, and I don't think the rec department has the capacity to maintain the fields the way they would have to be maintained if we wanted to strictly do all organic because of the amount. It's like almost 2 or 3 or 4 times a week type of treatment, not treatment, but work that you have to do on the fields. So I'm looking forward to Brian coming before us. Is he going to come before us maybe in January, Kristen, or did you talk to him about when he might be able to?
I didn't.
Or is he going to just do it as a written proposal?
And then from there, we can move
Okay.
forward.
All right. Yeah, I'm more than happy to listen to what he has to say. I just think that we have to factor in, too, the cost of an all-organic, the success rate of it, and of course, he'll tell you that we can do it, but what he said to Tom and I was it requires a tremendous amount of town-wide maintenance, and I don't think the rec department has the capacity to do it. So I think that we want to kind of keep an open mind about staying, 90%, 99% organic with maybe 1 or 2 treatments a year, depending upon the level of comfort we can all get as a committee about the safety of it. I did get the impression when he was talking about the MSDS sheets, and he was talking about the rankings, and they rank on these sheets, the levels of danger of the different chemicals. And he told us, I think, that they were all at the very low end of the possible rating. So if 10 is the worst and 5 is the least, they were all down the bottom of that risk factor.
Yes. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Monaco.
I think Kristen's work showed that they're at the low end of the risk field if they're used individually but not in tandem, and it sounds like some of them are used in tandem, if I have that correct.
Yes, and group 1 is carcinogen to humans, and that's their trade secret, is in one of these chemicals, and it's labeled that. So studies show that when you test the soil, even though they say it biodegrades, it shows up in the dew and then soil samples later, so.
So, I'm kind of a stickler on this. I want to stick with all organic, but I would like to hear some kind of, or see some sort of a presentation of what it would cost to do it right. And I think that since they're our fields that we're talking about, we can't tell the town what to do with their fields. But I think on ours, if it's a matter of money, I think that we should be prepared to help pay for whatever it takes to keep them to get them into really good shape and keep them there by using all organics. But that's just my one opinion.
So I'd like to suggest that we table the conversation, and we're going to get a report. We are expecting a report at the end of November. If we can maybe get that report, not just 3 days in advance of our meeting, but when it comes in. I know it's going to Mr. Murphy and to Mr. Egan, but if we could get that report so we could look it over, and then we can have another conversation. We can decide if we want to have any further presentations from anyone, and that kind of thing. Does that sound like we should move on? Done with that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. All right. The next item on the agenda are the policy updates that are being proposed. And there are 2 that are related, but I want to separate them. So the first policy that's being proposed, and I believe, is this a first reading, Mrs. Gilbert?
Yes.
Okay. As a first reading is the wellness policy for the school district. Just for some background, the state has a requirement that all school districts have a wellness committee, and that they have certain people who are supposed to be on them, such as the school nurse and school phys ed staff and nutrition staff and representatives from the community. and parents and students and a member of the school committee and school administrators. There are other members of the committee that are also participate from at times. And right now, our coordinator of health and wellness, Matt Jackling, has been leading this committee for, I think, a couple of years now. I am the school committee liaison, so I've been attending the meetings. And a subgroup of the wellness committee spent a lot of time looking through our previous wellness policy to update it, because there's a lot of things that have been happening. Vaping, I don't think, had been an issue when we last had that policy. So, you know, lots of new curriculum has come online. We have new data from our YRBS surveys in the last few years. We've enhanced our puberty education. So they've really updated it. And I, first of all, want to thank the members of the Wellness Committee who spent the time to update this policy, because it does take a long time to look through and carefully see what's appropriate, what's not appropriate, what's still relevant, what's not relevant, and what might be missing. So I want to thank all those people for their work on this. This is a first reading, and this wellness policy has the annual responsibilities of the Wellness Committee, the nutrition education, health education, physical education, nutrition, as in what foods are served in the schools, and school-based activities and programs. The school committee also has in their packet the old wellness committee so that we can compare. And I wanted to ask if anyone has any questions now at the first reading that we would want to get answered on this policy, and hopefully we'd be able to vote on it at our next meeting. Yes, Mr. Nelson.
Procedural question, Madam Chairman. Is this wellness policy going to supplant the old one, the ADF? Are we going to throw that one out?
Yes, this would
if we
be,
adopt this one?
this is a new policy to replace the old ADF policy, and Sharon was kind enough to give us both in our packet so we can make those comparisons.
And did the whole wellness subcommittee vote on this policy to recommend it to us?
They approved it and sent it to the school committee at this time. They've been working on it, I think, since last spring. And they presented it to the Wellness Committee at our last committee meeting, and we agreed it was ready to come to the school committee.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Okay. Any other questions tonight? Yes, Dr.
Madam Chair, just a
Conti.
very brief comment is, I think part of the power of the Wellness Committee, and also an opportunity to highlight some cooperation with our general government departments. Susan Luminello from the Board of
that's
Health
right.
sits on our Wellness Committee, and Christine Truhan from Youth and Family Services sits on the Wellness Committee. So it is really it's a collaborative group, and we, I think, the conversations I find very, very helpful and focused on kids. So that was great, and I want to thank them for spending the time.
Okay. Does anyone else have any further conversation tonight on this? Okay. The next policy that we have in our packet to discuss is our concussion policy. We have a current concussion policy, and what has been proposed is that, and again, this was through the Wellness Committee, our trainer has put a lot of time into updating how we treat our athletes who have concussions. There's been some new medical information about ways to treat athletes with concussions, and she's done a nice job putting together a whole series of procedures that are updated from our previous policy. What didn't get done is I don't believe it was actually inserted into our current concussion policy, which addresses a broader field than this treatment of athletes who get concussions. For example, Mrs. Monaco brought to my attention that this new section doesn't talk about the baseline testing that we've had in place. And so I am concerned that I want to be sure that we also review our full concussion policy, the JJIF, and this new proposal for changing how we do the follow-up to concussions procedures, the treatment. So Mrs. Monaco, you wanted to make a suggestion on that, yes?
Yes, I would like to table this first reading until whenever you can Dr. Conti, when you can have representatives here to answer questions, because I have a lot of questions about the whole baseline issue. There are a lot of schools of thought on it, and I would like to thoroughly discuss that before we even have the first reading on the
I'll
policy.
second the motion to table.
Okay. Is there any further discussion tonight? Mrs. Russo?
Table or?
Yeah, to table. Would you like to comment on the policy first?
So there was, normally when we get a policy with changes, there are red inserts or strikeouts. There was none of that.
Right, and that's my understanding, is that it wasn't, nobody sort of figured out that this was something to be changed in our old policy, that it was something additional, but I'd like to see it integrated into our, whatever we vote on. And we might want to change other things in the previous concussion policy. And so that's why the two policies here that Mrs. Gilbert gave us, one is the new one, which is only referring to treatment of athletes, and one is the old one, which does not include, so it's not being combined. And Dr. Conti has been in touch with our trainer who put this together, asking for some clarification, and I'd like to support the idea of tabling this, because I think we need to integrate this new idea and review the old policy, including all the issues that Mrs. Monaco is raising.
And I echo her concerns.
Okay.
I'm
All right. Yes,
not
Mrs.
sure
Monaco?
if table is the right word.
Yeah, I know, we have more work to do.
Put it on the calendar. I mean, I don't know what the right term
It's a
is.
motion to table. That's
Table
correct.
it until a time certain,
Okay.
or until Dr. Conti
Table
can.
the first reading until our next meeting?
Well, until he can arrange for the discussions to take place.
Okay. All right, so any further discussion on tabling this till we have more information?
No.
No. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Abstained? The chair votes aye. Thank you. All right. The next item is out-of-state travel. Dr. Conti?
Thank you, Madam Chair. BHS Principal Sullivan has requested approval for out-of-state travel for the Department Chairman George Rakovich to attend the National Art Education Conference in Minnesota on March 26th through 28th. And again, the costs are in the art department budget, and I'm recommending the school committee approve out-of-state travel for Mr. Rakovich to the National Art Education Conference in Minnesota.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Okay, thank you. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Chair votes aye. Thank you.
Assistant Superintendent Larkin has submitted an out-of-state travel request for Todd Whitten, Michael Milton, Sally Delano to attend the National Conference for Social Studies in Austin, Texas, November 22nd through 24th. Again, this is something that's been in the high school social studies department budget, and recommend school committee approve out-of-state travel for Todd Whitten, Michael Milton, and Sally Delano to Austin, Texas for the National Conference for Social Studies Teachers on November 22nd through 24th.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Chair votes aye.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Guidance Coordinator Joe Adebato is requesting some after-the-fact out-of-state travel for the guidance counselors. They visited colleges on November 13th, the Staff Professional Development Day. We had a guidance counselor go to URI, and another one attend Roger Williams College in Rhode Island. We just didn't have a meeting in between. I had given approval before. I just want to make sure that we're following the policy. So again, I'm recommending after the fact that you approve the guidance counselors travel out of state.
So moved.
Second.
Sharon, I sent you an email, and I'm not sure I got to it with all the wrestling tournaments on it. That'll be in December. We might miss some of those too. Is that? Yeah, I think there just might be an early tournament in New York. So I'll take care of that. You'll see them all at our next
Did we vote
meeting.
on that one?
We didn't vote.
Let's vote on
Would
that
you,
one.
would you
Oh,
like
I'm
us to
sorry.
vote?
No.
Oh, we didn't vote, yes, okay, all those in, so this, what the motion on the table is for the guidance
Retroactive.
counselor, retroactive trips by the guidance counselors out of state. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, chair votes aye.
I might have somebody.
So, now, Dr. Conti, did you have something else to say
Yeah,
about the
I do, I'm sorry.
wrestling?
Did we miss something, Stephanie? I'm sorry.
Okay, why don't you come on now,
Yes.
I apologize, which item are you referring to?
So
I needed to check on it. My name's Stephanie Fischel. I teach 11th grade world history. And I had submitted to Mr. Sullivan an addendum to a student travel opportunity that I had gotten approved by the school committee in May to Europe.
Yes, okay, I had seen that one.
Okay, and I didn't know, I had sent it to Mark to send to you. And
Yes.
But I wanted to be here just in case there was questions, because it's kind of a time-sensitive concern, and I hadn't heard anything back from you, but I didn't know if it was coming to student council or school committee, because I was at school council tonight.
That's where it started out.
So let me sort of summarize, because I
Yes.
think Mark and I just spoke about it.
Okay.
So there was it's a school trip, and it's over vacation, but this particular school trip was altered a little bit, so the kids are gonna miss 3 days of school, is that correct?
So our original travel dates were April vacation, Saturday to Saturday.
Right.
Due to the low enrollment, normally they would just jump you in with another school who's doing the same trip, and so you'd combine. But there's not another school doing that trip at that time period, and the closest trip to the original itinerary was a trip that I had done in April 2017, which was London, Paris, and Berlin, as addition to the Berlin, Prague, and Munich that we were doing before. But with that, the travel dates, because you're combining with other schools, the only available travel dates were April 15th to April 23rd, which would be the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, prior to the start of April vacation. And that was, I just wanted to, obviously I can't make a decision.
And we were talking about how many students, and I'm sorry, I
So
forget.
I have 3 currently enrolled,
Uh-huh.
who've been paying for a long time, so they are financially invested in this trip. And then I have 4 students who are they wanted to sign up, and I told them to hold off until I had answers for them. So potentially, I would say definitely 3, potentially like 6.
Right, and the school committee had already supported the trip during April vacation. Mark had
Yes.
said he was comfortable with the students missing. This is really no fault of the kids, so again, I had told him, I'm sorry I didn't
No,
get to
that's
you in
fine.
time, that
I was here
I had
anyways.
supported this change. Again, it's not the kids' fault, and so I'd like to support them going, and they'd be responsible for the work that they miss and
I've spoken to the
everything else like
parents just to
that,
keep,
so-
when I'm keeping them, and they were supportive, and
Where's the trip to?
this particular new trip would be London, Paris, and Berlin. With a World War II, US II,
Can
World
I
II
go?
focus. You can, sure.
Can we all go?
Yes, you can all come. It's very good.
Madam
So,
Chair, I move that we amend our prior approval in May to reflect the dates of April, is it 15th through the,
April 15th to April 23rd.
to April 23rd for the trip to London, Paris, and
Berlin.
Berlin.
Yes.
Question?
Well, can we
Second.
Second, okay, comments, yes.
I just have a quick question. Do you or does someone make an effort to coordinate with the teachers of the students so they don't miss any major exams?
I will take that upon myself to give them the field trip kind of form, something that they can go approach their teachers with and just get it signed off on.
Okay.
2 of the students are seniors and who have excitedly already applied to college, so they're not super concerned on that end, because they're like, I'm done.
Yeah, but if they have a big
right,
math
absolutely,
test
of
on
course.
Thursday, they
Yep.
might be.
Right,
Okay.
and we've talked with their parents, and they were okay, and they will get approval like a normal field trip, kind of ahead of time, and we'll
Thank
have
you.
a plane ride where they can do lots of work.
Okay. Are there other questions or comments from the committee? No. Yes, we have a question. Can you speak into the microphone up here?
I'm super loud.
Oh,
but-
well, the thing is that people who are watching on the video, on the
Yes,
BCAT.
I just wanted to point out that that's during Passover. It may not impact anybody, but it just might impact kosher meals for those 2 days.
Okay.
Just to be,
So-
it didn't before, but now it will
Okay.
impact Passover.
Right.
Just so you're aware.
So, and
Thank
as the advisor to the trip, you would be speaking with students who that might impact?
Yes.
Great. Thank you very much
Thank
for
you for
that.
bringing that up.
I also personally want to thank you for taking students on trips like these. I know it's really fun, but it also is a big commitment, and it's really, really appreciated, so thank you.
Thank you.
Are there other comments on this motion? All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? The chair votes aye.
Stephanie, I just
So we're all
want to say,
set. Thank you.
Mark followed right up, so it
Yes,
wasn't
no,
that.
that's
it
right.
was-
I
it
was here for school committee, or, student council's Thanksgiving dinner
Yes.
tonight, so while I was here, I said, you know what,
So
I'm gonna
the-
go check it.
The
Great.
delay was mine.
Okay, no worries.
Thank you for
Thank you so much,
making
I
the time to
appreciate it.
come. Good,
Thank you.
okay. Are there other issues on out-of-state travel? No. Are there other items that have not been brought up at this point? Is there anyone else here for public participation tonight? Would you like to come up and?
Yeah,
make
very,
s-
very quickly.
Okay.
I just wanted to say, Jamie Greitzer again, very excited about the respectfully healthy relationships. I think it's incredibly important. My only concern is that it starts at age 12, where the example you brought up was the text messaging and then the children learning to say, like, that's not, you know, a great way to speak to your friend, and there are other ways. That needs to start in 3rd grade. Kids have phones in 3rd grade, and these issues of social media are coming up in elementary school at this time, so I just urge that we start earlier.
Yes,
Through the
Mr.
chair.
Larkin?
Yeah,
would you
just a
come?
couple things. We are working on, and they already have them in place, maybe not by these official names, but social emotional learning teams at each level, and we're working with the Rennie Center this year to kind of coordinate a district approach. And at the same time, I've been working with Ellen Ullman at the BEF on some joint topics to run for parents. So that's definitely one of the things that we've been talking about, is how can we support parents at home as well as the messages we want to send in school. So those are the kinds of topics that we're talking about running as under the umbrella of Parent University. Yeah, so thank you.
Yes, and just to reiterate, we do that kind of education earlier in the schools. This is a particular campaign that's being promoted by the Lieutenant Governor's office that we wanted to support in addition to all the other things that we do. I didn't want anyone to think that this is all we do for healthy relationships. And just as I said earlier, our health and wellness director, Matt Jackling, he oversees the district around all these kinds of issues, and it is being addressed, to my knowledge, in many grades. And would you say it starts at least in the 3rd grade, if not earlier? Yeah. Okay, thank you, that's an important issue. Is there anyone else here for public participation? Okay, the school committee does have need for an executive session under General Law 30A, Section 21A, subsection 2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, the superintendent. We have the need to discuss these matters in executive session because to discuss them publicly would jeopardize the position of the body. After the executive session, we will reconvene only to adjourn the public session. So I will accept a motion.
So moved.
Second?
Mrs. Russo?
Aye.
Mr. Nelson?
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Mr. Murphy?
Aye.
The chair votes aye. The school committee is now in an executive session. Thank you.